Hello, everybody. It's great to see so many faces here this morning. And so it's nice to see themes 1 and theme 2. We're going to talk a little bit about theme 3. And actually, I took the privilege of renaming the theme. So Orlando, hopefully you don't mind, I inserted bio-based fibers into this theme. So this is actually an important part of our theme. And a number of researchers within the theme, but this theme really revolves around using polymeric materials, using fibers, making composite materials, and making sure that we're doing this using the renewable resources that are available to us. So I'm going to go ahead and try to see if I can figure out this little remote. All right, press once, it works. So our theme, we do a lot of actually fundamental and applied research in this theme. And so some of the work that we do is a lot of on the characterization side. So within nature, we have these plant-based materials that we're trying to separate using different technologies. During separation, we usually influence the structure of the material. And so we're looking at different ways to actually really get a hold in terms of understanding structure-property relationships of these materials. We're also really interested in this theme of actually building new polymers. And so we're building new polymers either from bio-based monomers that we can derive or even other sustainable resources such as carbon dioxide. So using CO2 as an important part of building these polymeric materials. Along with this area is looking at actually transformation. And so I think this is where rubber hits the road in terms of really trying to understand how to make useful materials that either for textiles or for packaging, coatings, other type of materials that you find in everyday life, right? And so there's some examples here of coatings, plastics, textile fibers, carbon fiber. And so we can find all these type of materials all around us within everyday life. We're also very interested in carbon-based materials. And so if we think about high-performance materials, we can think about carbon fiber. We can also think about carbon aerogels. And so these are very lightweight, high surface area materials that can be used in electrodes and supercapacitors. And then the area that I've inserted, because there's a number of people that work in this area within the BPI, and really the pulp and paper industry is kind of the foundation for the BPI originally. It's a lot of folks actually work with fiber systems. And then not only with fiber systems on the pulp and paper side, but then also in composite materials as well. So to kind of kick off this group of scientists working in this area, one person is Chungping Dai. He's an associate professor in wood science. And so he joined our department relatively recently. He's expert in natural fibers and composite materials, and so he works in this area of bamboo applications and manufacturing. And so he's tied closely with a number of industries, some emerging industries like red leaf pulp. And so he collaborates with folks within the BPI. And so him and Orlando have this really nice paper in terms of looking at molded pulp fiber as a replacement for food packaging. And so food packaging is definitely a high value kind of type material within the market, and there's serious issues in terms of using a number of additives in the current food packaging and the fluorinated type materials. And so looking at different ways to remove that and then use different types of molding techniques for this packaging. Also looking at using bark as a resource to make these nice fire retardant cladding for different residential structures and whatnot. Nope, sorry, I needed to double click that. So moving forward, There's another professor. He's at the UBC Okanagan, and so Mohammed Arjman, he's works in the area of polymer-based materials and also nanocomposites, and so he's actually been a great collaborator with a number of folks here at UBC Vancouver. And so he really works in the kind of making very functional materials, and so looking at different ways to take different types of plastics and make them conductive, make them magnetic, to really open up a number of new applications for them. The other really interesting thing about his research is he's been tied into a number of actually research clusters in terms of recycling plastics out there, and so helping put the circular into circular bioeconomy, and so he leads a research cluster in plastic recycling. His research lab is very nicely equipped, and so he has lots of polymer processing equipment there at the Okanagan campus, and so things like extrusion, injection molding, a number of different applications to help transform these renewable materials into a number of useful products. Our next researcher within theme 3 that I have listed here is Parisa, and so she's a professor of chemistry, and so she works in the area of bio-based and biodegradable polymers, and so this is a really important part within our research theme, and so she's a chemist by training, and so she works a lot with actually the synthesis of converting these different monomers into polymers and different unique catalysts that will really enable tight control of the polymeric materials. And so she's actually been part of the Peter Wall Institute here, a multi-interdisciplinary institute. She's also, her other hat besides being a great researcher is actually she's the graduate chair in chemistry. And so the research highlight I have here is that she's using different types of actually cellulose nanoparticles that have been functionalized. So some are anionic, some are cationic, and actually mixing those into polysaccharide kind of matrix. And so being able to make biodegradable electronics. And so this really kind of shows the future of where some of these bio-based materials can move to. And so if you can think about in terms of historically where we started with a lot of plastics out there, we can think about different types of things like celluloid and kind of film, right? And so this is really going to the next stage of moving all the way to having these materials conduct electricity and things like that. So Derek D is an assistant professor in the Land and Food Systems, and so he works food chemistry and also functional amyloids. And so I have 3 actually advertisements up here for his students' posters. And so, so if you think about a lot of proteins, proteins can form easily form secondary and tertiary structures based on things such as alpha helices and beta sheets and things like that. And so you can take a number of different types of proteins, extract them out, then you can hydrolyze them, break them down a little bit, or denature them, and then actually they can assemble back together into this fibril form. And so these fibrils kind of almost look like things such as the nanocellulose that folks in theme 2 work with. And so on the left you can see that these fibrils, amyloid fibrils, can form really nice gels. In the middle, students are actually looking at kind of understanding what the structure of these protein fibrils are. And then on this third one is using cryo-EM, so electron microscopy, to really help design different types of functional biomaterials. And so this is really nice because Bioproducts Institute, we work a lot with forest-based resources, but at the same time, we're not exclusive to those. And so this research really highlights that we are interested in proteins and other bio-based materials out there. And so the next researcher I have here is Mark Martinez, and so he is actually the former director of the BPI, and so he actually helped move the BPI forward very early on, and helping getting it to where it is today. And so part of the effort was leading a CFI for over $10 million a CFI, and so we got a nice micro CT microscope to campus with that funding. And so he uses that tool for quantitative microscopy, and so really understanding the structure and location of, and here he's using hand sheets, and so looking at imaging paper hand sheets, and then actually can segment those into these individual fibers, and you can actually track each fiber, and then actually you can manipulate the image. You can look at it in a 360 rotation, and so you can have a really good understanding. Not only can you have just the image, but you can actually collect images while these materials are undergoing transformation. So there's different types of testing frames that they have to basically pull on these hand sheets or other type of materials and look at the fracture of these materials. You can also look at different phenomena like wetting, and so we can see how fluid transport happens within these materials. And so it's an excellent tool to really help BPI build. Be a leader in terms of next generation bio-based materials. And so start talking about next generation biomaterials is on the right side here. And so there's two movies here. And so Mark's group does a lot with multi-phase flows. And so he looks at different liquids that actually can react together, and then how these can be manipulated into kind of new structures. And so the simulation diagram there, we see this A plus B equals C. And so I have two videos, and so if I click on it, hopefully we're going to see something happen. So everybody hold your breath. All right, look at that. So this is a simulation, and so actually working with a number of different researchers, they were able to mathematically model the flow behavior of these different liquids as they kind of begin to layer upon themselves. And so really this whole research is about very controlled layering. And so if you have something like a hydrogel, this liquid state, you have to remove a lot of the water, and how do you end up trapping that into shape that you want? So in this case, they're using this flow focusing technique to actually lock that hydrogel into things like a film, or on the right side, they've actually used this to make things like a tube. Oh, let's see if, can I get the second video working with this one click? All right, hopefully you're not still holding your breath. Sorry. I'll just go back and just explain it. So basically, there's a you have flow, and you have this. Oh, excellent. So you kind of have these two flows, and so he's actually almost essentially 3D printing this hydrogel as a tube. And so depending upon the flow rates and the concentrations, you can actually control the diameter of the tube, and also the wall thickness of the tube. And so some of this work is formed a spin-off company called Bioform. And so a really interesting way in terms of making these new type of plastics, or replaceable plastics out there. And so to finish up, just my research group, and so we've worked in the area of lignin, a lot of hemicelluloses, a little bit of cellulose as well. Lots of collaborators around the BPI, and so I have a graduate student that recently was on CTV News, and so she's working with the Xylem films, and so something called that, she said that her brother helped come up with a name. It's called Grastic, and so it's just basically a grass-based packaging material. In addition to being a prof here at UBC, I wear the hat of being the chair for the Cellulose and Renewable Materials Division of the American Chemical Society. And I'm also the director of our new undergraduate program in Forest Bioeconomy Science and Technology. And so actually, all the industry folks here today, please, I'd love to talk to you about a number of great students who would love to have co-op opportunities within your company. So maybe I can connect up with you later today. So with my research, we do lots of fiber spinning, like melt spinning, things like that. And so we have a poster today. We do also electrospinning. We have another poster about electrospinning of lignin. We're interested in lightweight materials and also things like xylene nanomaterials. So with that, I'll turn it over to theme 4.